If you've been searching for answers to stop your leakage, this is for you. A lot of times when you deal with leakage, you've tried everything under the sun and feel like you're still coming up short. It's like, how do I stop this? Maybe you've tried Kegels. Maybe you followed advice from your doctor and still feel like you're leaking with no results. Here's the thing, it's not your fault. A lot of times when women experience leakage, they're given either the wrong tools or no tools at all. So today I'm going to share with you 5 reasons why it's not your fault, and more importantly, what you can actually do to stop it. Number 1, my number 1 reason leakage isn't your fault is because you've never been told or taught about your pelvic floor. You don't know where it is. Some women don't know what it does outside of thinking they should just be doing Kegels. And so this is a big reason why you're leaking. If you're not taught about your anatomy and that part of your body, how will you know how to fix it? How will you know when something's wrong? So just the education of knowing what the pelvic floor does and that it doesn't just squeeze and tighten is super important to stopping leakage. I once had a 70-year-old client, or she was in her 70s, and she began crying in our session because I simply showed her on the model where her pelvic floor was. And she said to me, no one has ever showed me this in my entire life. And to get to that age and not really know how your body works can be very saddening. So there's a lot of women that are leaking because they just simply don't know or have the education of what their pelvic floor does and what it's supposed to support and how important it is. My second reason that you're leaking, but it isn't your fault, is because if you've had one baby or multiple babies or even been pregnant before and never received postpartum rehab or recovery, this is a main reason why you're experiencing leakage, and it's not your fault. And unfortunately, if you live in the United States, this is a lot of us. Our body goes through significant changes to carry a baby, make a baby, and then deliver that baby. And so it doesn't really matter if you've had a cesarean or a vaginal delivery, you can still experience leakage. And so because of all the changes our body is going through and even the stress to our pelvic floor, if you don't have rehab to help those muscles fully recover, you can be at much higher risk of having leakage. Third reason why you may be experiencing leakage and it's not your fault is because you're just not prioritizing your health, your pelvic health, amongst all of your other responsibilities. So as moms, our lives are super busy. As women, our lives are super busy. A lot of us have taken on these nurturing roles, whether it's caring for children or even an aging parent, just managing your family. It is very easy to knock yourself down on the totem pole. And again, it could be a cultural thing where it's acceptable for you not to take care of yourself. It may be a badge of honor, like I've mentioned before, to be like the strong friend. But when you don't prioritize your health, you're more likely to ignore leakage, to brush it off as something that's not that big of a deal. The great news is that you can change that today. But if you don't prioritize your health, the leakage that you experience now will continue to worsen. Next is number 4, which really does connect to number 3. You never really learned or you don't practice self-care. Maybe you just don't even recognize what that is. So if you've taken on this nurturer role, you feel fulfilled in taking care of others. But if you don't prioritize yourself and you don't know that self-care is a practice, again, you're more likely to ignore leakage and allow it to continue to worsen until you just can't ignore it anymore. And so a lot of times women, specifically high achieving women that are in careers that, you've worked long and hard to get to where you are. Sometimes there's this like fear of loss. If I take a pause to do anything for myself, I'm going to lose traction in life, career, relationships. But here's the thing I want you to consider. Do you want to be in control of the pause button, or do you want to be paused? Because guess what? All the companies that you work for, they are going to continue to run whether you're there or not. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but we have to be in control of our own well-being. We live in a country, in America specifically, where we're very reactive to our health. If you, God forbid, get diagnosed with high blood pressure or diabetes, you have to be more intentional about your health. But let's take a different perspective. Why not be ahead of the game and be proactive instead of reactive? So once you know what the pelvic floor does, what it is, and how important it is, it's not something that you're going to push to the bottom of the totem pole. You're going to start being intentional about caring for yourself, prioritizing self-care, and addressing anything within your health that just isn't right. So for me, I even had to redefine self care really as recent as last year. So I was a regular nail appointment girl. Like every 2 weeks, I'm getting my nails done. My son had a very rigorous basketball schedule last summer. So it just was not a priority for me anymore. And then I had to think about, okay, is getting my nails done a part of my self care? And it really wasn't. It actually was just one more appointment that I had to keep up with. It was not something that was making me better. And so once I started to pour more into my prayer life, my yoga practice, and some alone time for journaling, then I really started to dig deeper into what self-care looked like for me. And it's going to look different for everyone, but these are practices. These are not appointments, you know? So once you kind of reframe that, you really do get to figure out what that looks like for you. Okay, so the fifth and final reason why you're leaking, but it's not your fault, is you don't really have a clear plan for how to nourish your body with healthy foods. So you may know how to read labels a little bit. You probably are very aware that low sodium is best in your diet. You shouldn't have a high consumption of sugar, but you just don't have a real plan to nourish your body. This becomes super important for your pelvic floor because there are things in our diet that we may need to modify to reduce irritants to our bladder. We need to have the proper amount of water intake for our body size and our activity level. And if these are things that you aren't aware of, this can keep you in that constant loop of leakage. And so what we eat can either support the health of the pelvic floor or work against it. So you need to have a clear strategy or you're going to overlook how much nutrition matters for your body, but more specifically, your pelvic floor. So now that we've talked about the 5 reasons why leaking isn't your fault, let's talk about what you can do about it. I like to use the acronym FRESH, FRESH, because that is the framework I actually use with my clients. It really helps to simplify these areas that you need to pay attention to build a strong foundation. Once you have that foundation, it's going to give you the support you need to stop leakage that no amount of Kegels can do alone. So let's get into that. So F is for focused breathing. If you follow any pelvic floor therapist or pelvic health page, you have probably seen the emphasis on diaphragmatic breathing and how you breathe. This is really important because that is directly connected to the function of your pelvic floor. So if you're a breath holder, you hold tension, grinding your teeth, you're an open mouth breather, these are things that can contribute to leakage. So establishing that foundation with diaphragmatic breathing really allows you to connect to your pelvic floor so that you can start to efficiently contract those muscles without the compensations of holding your breath, squeezing your butt, and all the other things that really don't help your pelvic floor at all. R is for restful sleep. Deep recovery happens when our body has a chance to rest. This includes your pelvic floor. So if you're not getting good quality sleep, meaning you're waking up multiple times to pee potentially, or you're waking up with your thoughts and you're not getting into that deep sleep, your pelvic floor doesn't have a chance to recover. This can also be evident if you're not getting enough hours of sleep. So if you're getting like 6-ish hours or less, you're probably not getting that deep recovery during that time either. And this is a big deal for your pelvic floor because if you're on the higher tension side, then you have to have time to recover and rest. You may also hear when people start new workout programs, if they're getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep, but busting their butt in the gym, even if their diet is impeccable, they will not see the same results as someone who's getting 7 to 8 hours every night because our body has to recover. Your pelvic floor is no different. So this is a really, really important step, and it helps builds a strong foundation for any exercise to work for you, because if you don't have this, then you probably will continue to struggle with leakage. E is for efficient recovery. So recovery and restful sleep kind of go hand in hand. They're like two sisters. And so our pelvis is a center for pain, trauma. We hold a lot of tension there. So if you never have the opportunity to recover or rest, then that can also keep you leaking. So a recovery plan looks very different for every person, but we have to give our bodies that opportunity to kind of let go. And this is why Kegels may not work for everyone. If you're constantly working on the tension side and squeezing side of things, your pelvic floor does much more than that. And those muscles need to have the ability or the opportunity to relax. If you're constantly holding and constantly squeezing, the muscles just don't work as efficiently as they should. S is for smart nutrition. We really can't get away from the diet side of things. We have to have a plan and a strategy. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons it's not your fault you're leaking is if you don't have a plan, but part of the solution is what? Having a plan. So knowing what the triggers are in your diet, knowing what you need to have hydrated and flexible muscles, all of that is very important for your pelvic floor healing and your journey to stop leakage. If that's not addressed, you can do all the exercises in the world and still have problems within your pelvic floor. H is for healthy movement. So I've talked about, going for daily walks is highly supportive to your pelvic floor. Anything that encourages balance, stability, standing on one leg, resistance training, all of those things help your pelvic floor. So supporting your pelvic floor is much more than just doing Kegels. And you want to know what are the healthy movements you need to make for your specific problem. Again, that looks very different for everyone, but having a customized plan is what's going to support you throughout this lifelong process, because you're not going to make these changes for 4 weeks and then go back to doing whatever you were doing. These are lifestyle changes that you have to make if you truly want to resolve leakage. So there you have it. I hope this gave you a fresh perspective on why leaking isn't your fault, but more importantly, what you can do about it. The Fresh framework is the starting point for making meaningful changes in your life. And when you focus on those 5 areas, you give your pelvic floor the foundation it needs so that you can stop leaking without just doing Kegels. If this resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you're first to know about any future videos designed to help you take control of your pelvic health. Bye.